Alrighty, everyone, we're looking at the 5 muscles you should know for your golf game. And there's a ton of different muscles that are working when we're swinging, obviously, though I'm going to go into 5 muscles you may not have heard of or 5 muscles that aren't often talked about. And I think these will help you improve the game, decrease injury, and also help improve your training as well. So this study here, core muscle activation activity throughout the golf swing. It's a great study to look at, and I can link this to you as well at your request. And there's 2 tables which I'll briefly take you through, which looks at the muscles working in both the upper body, which breaks the swing down into different phases, and then also we've got the lower body as well there. So this is a really detailed way of getting information about, again, what you should try and target in your training and how it can improve your game. So let's talk about this anatomy model, and also, if you don't like what muscles look like deep down, bear with me here. But obviously on screen we've got the golf swing happening obviously through different phases. So we have obviously our backswing phase here, we've got our downswing, and also our impact position and follow through. And with these phases of the golf swing, obviously we have a lot of different things that are happening. So let's break down firstly the backswing there, and the top of the backswing, what muscles are working at high percentages. So we're going to look at the right side. So this would be for a right-sided golfer, though you can obviously flip this around if you're a lefty. So the first muscle we're going to look at is called the upper serratus, and you may not have heard of this, but this muscle essentially goes from our shoulder blade and attaches into the rib cage. So for a right-hander, it's going to be around this region here, and what that does, it basically rotates the scapula up, and it basically connects, like I said, into the rib cage here. So if I bring up the muscle in Google Images here, you're going to see how that looks. So this muscle is working really hard to control your shoulder blade in your backswing. And I see a lot of dysfunctions around the serratus muscle in golfers because we're constantly moving in one direction, we're hitting the ground. And when this muscle's weak, we often see what's called scapular winging, and it can come with some injuries as well. So let's type in this. And again, bear with me because this looks pretty ugly. But with this person here, you can see how the shoulder blade's coming up off the surface. So this could be a weakness of another muscle we'll look at in a moment, but a weakness of this muscle here, serratus, where this will sit. So in your programs, what helps with this is a lot of you may have done single arm planks to push-ups, the external rotation into a press. So these are all great exercises to help control this. Even pressing movements are training this muscle as well. So this is one to keep an eye out for. If you're having issues around your shoulder blade, pain around the shoulder blade, send me a message and I can update the program for you. The next muscle we're looking at is called your subscapularis, which is a part of the rotator cuff. So if we go back into this model here, so in the backswing, the subscapularis sits underneath the shoulder blade in this region here. And if we go into the activations, it's working at 64% in the through the impact zone and through the late follow through. So basically, if you're righty, the shoulder is rotating towards the body and that club's releasing. So I'll bring up the muscle in full here. So there it is. And this is sitting, again, inside the shoulder blade. So if we're looking at the shoulder from front on, we've got our pec muscle. We've got supraspinatus, which also is a part of the rotator cuff. And then we've got our subscapularis, which sits underneath here. So again, when we're rotating our arm through that impact zone, that muscle is contracting to bring the shoulder head forward and the shoulder blade forward as well. So where this comes into training is when we're doing rotations with bands, when we're doing punches. things of that nature. And if we're doing golf specific drills like your chops and actions like that. And if you feel like you're having shoulder pain as well or stiffness around that area, let me know, because we can certainly adjust it to make sure the balance is correct. Typically what I see though, this muscle is quite strong with most people because a lot of us are doing anterior dominated movements, meaning front based movements, like we're sitting quite a lot, we're playing golf, so we're constantly using that muscle. I often see weakness of another muscle, infraspinatus, which sits on the back, which we'll get into next. So the infraspinatus, where that's working quite hard in the golf swing, again, is in the follow through, but on the other side, and it's also in this impact position as well. And we're going to the left side now. So this muscle is an external rotator because the left arm is coming off the body and we're rotating into our follow through. This one is an important one to note. And this is probably the more common side I see golfers get injured on. So it's their non-dominant hand. Because our club is hitting into the ground, our shoulder is potentially coming in a position of instability. And if you're weak, eventually that instability can start to develop. So it's called posterior instability, where the shoulder starts to move too much, going backwards into the joint. And again, that can happen if you are weak and unstable through that side. So let's bring up this muscle in full here. And again, this is part of the rotator cuff, and it sits on the back side here of the shoulder blade. This is probably a better image to look at. And again, this is helping our shoulder rotate as we're going through impact. It's helping the shoulder get out of the way. And if you're weak in this muscle or limited in your shoulder rotation movement, that can affect it as well. So exercises for these are when we're rotating out with the band, external rotations here. Again, when we're doing goal specific drills, and also your single arm planks and things like that are going to help get that muscle activated as well. So in terms of importance, this is one that you should pay attention to. Like I said, with the subscapularis muscle, the one that sits underneath the shoulder blade that we just discussed, that's typically pretty strong in most clients that I see. This one is certainly the one that's unbalanced. And ideally, we want to keep it pretty even between both those two muscles. So we're going to look at the lower body now. We're going to talk about a muscle called your biceps femoris, which is a part of the hamstring group. So let's have a look at this. See if I bring up the image in full. So you can see how it sits on the outer side of the hamstring, goes into our pelvis, into the butt bone here, wraps around the outside of the knee. And where it becomes into its highest action, if we bring up this chart, is in our backswing here. So 78% of its peak velocity, and also on our left side, 83%. So it's working extremely hard all the way through the golf swing. So we need to make sure that when we're training, we're keeping our hamstrings strong, and especially as we're getting older, typically we're sitting more. So these muscles are working pretty hard. So if we go back into this muscle, as you can see, it attaches in this side of the leg. When we're loading up into the golf swing, into the start of the forward swing, we're pushing off our right side. Obviously, we're trying to transfer our weight onto our left. So we're pushing off, the hamstring is actually contracting, the leg's extending for most. And then as we're coming into the downswing here, then we're shifting our weight to our left. So that hamstring is going to take a lot of that force. So in terms of your training, this is where your lunges, your squats, your trap bar deadlifts, your jumps, all those sort of things come into action. Also, when we're doing rotational jumps, the hamstring is both shortening and lengthening throughout those movements. So it's a muscle that we should be aware of. And I know that a lot of you in the group have done hamstring tweaks in the past. This is why it's really important, because we're getting a huge amount of force through that muscle. And then last but certainly not least is the glute medius muscle. And this muscle can be quite troublesome. I quite often see this as a weakness and can lead to quite a few hip ailments or hip issues. So it attaches to the glute bone here, then runs into the side of the head of the hip. And if this muscle is weak, sometimes we see excess movement of the hip or of the pelvis where it starts to move up and down. So it can become a little bit unstable, for lack of a better term. And what that can do, it can irritate the sac of fluid that sits underneath here. So you may have heard of bursitis before. So that can certainly happen. Or it can lead to issues higher up the chain. So the QL muscle will sit up here where it attaches from this bone here into the rib, which would be up here higher obviously. So that's where it's really important to make sure that we are training in the correct way for these muscles. So this is where side planks come in, where glute side planks come in, single leg bridges, again your lunges, your squats to strengthen this muscle. And where this comes into the golf swing is in our right side. Again, in our downswing acceleration phase, we're pushing off our right leg, and we need to be aware of that. So again, we're pushing pretty hard off our trail side, and then also we've got our glute max, which obviously sits over the top of that. That's working at 100% in that start of the downswing. So like they say, glutes are king and queen when it comes to the golf swing, and that's where a lot of our force is being developed from. And obviously from there we need to be stable with the ground to make sure that we're getting the most out of our body. So there you go, they're the 5 muscles you should know. So we've got the serratus, again sits under the shoulder blade and attaches into the ribs. We've got our subscapularis deeper in, that sits really close to the shoulder blade on the inside. Infraspinatus, that sits on the back of the shoulder blade, really important on our left side as we come through that impact position. We've got our biceps femoris when we're pushing off our trail leg, and then when we're pushing onto our lead leg through our impact zone. And we've got our glute medius, which again is working at 50% of its capacity, pushing off our trail leg in that downswing phase. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, do let me know, and I'll speak to you all very soon.